So hello everybody, I'm Alice, so I'm a Community Relations Manager at Lewisham Homes. The Community Relations team's been set up for just over a year now in its current form, and we have a new Chief Executive that joined us probably about a year ago as well, who's sort of looking at ensuring that tenants' voices and residents as a whole are heard. So here's a little view of her values and what her new approach is to our residents. You can see right in the middle there that thriving communities and places people are proud to call home. An element of that is, of course, ensuring that our residents are working and that they're happy and that they feel safe and secure in their homes. So on to the next slide, which tells you a little bit more about the values. And throughout this, what we try and do within the team is utilise all the values and that we engage with our residents and find new ideas and ways that we can do that, usually on a shoestring as well, because we don't actually have much money, as is the way of community relations budgets. We empower our residents as much as we can, which means we try and make our projects sustainable and ensure that the residents are on the face of it. And we look to deliver this not only through providing the great homes, but making people feel proud of the areas they live, empowering our residents to ensure that they feel happy, safe and secure. So this is how we do it. There's our CEO message here. So this is the kind of view of our CEO, who used to call Margaret Dodwell, and what she wants to do is make sure she listens to residents, and we make sure that we put projects on that are actually what the residents want, as opposed to just what we think they might want. So here we are. So what we've started this year is, because we're doing lots and lots of different engagement activities, lots of different employment opportunities for residents. Some of them are really popular, like our teaching assistant programme. Some weren't so popular. And we weren't quite sure why, so we decided we'd do a consultation, which we started right at the beginning of the year. We've had about sort of 60 responses to it so far, and that's helping us to develop a jobs fair event towards the end of year or mid-year, where we'll sort of get together all of the different employment agencies and make sure that we're putting on a show that residents will actually go to. And you can see we're offering a bit of incentive there as well, that £10 gift card from Tesco's. What we try to do is we work closely with partners. So we realise that we can't do it all. We're a very small team. There's only 4 of us in our team. And we not only do, obviously, the employment side, but we do all of the community engagement side, the youth engagement, consultation on things from lift floors to signage policies and antisocial behaviour. So what the team does is quite wide and varied. So what we do is we develop relationships with people that are offering employment opportunities or access to employment, and we make sure that we empower residents through them and put things on within Lewisham Homes. You can see sort of in the bottom corner of this slide is our partnership with LMU, and this is probably one of our favourite and most popular training opportunities that we have, and our sort of longest going partnership. And it's with London Metropolitan University and funded by Lewisham Tenants Fund. And what we do is we encourage residents to come for 3 days, and they get 5 credits, which help them to not only look good on their CV, but the housing knowledge is developed. And we've actually, through our consultation, learned that lots of our residents actually would like to go into a career in housing. So it's one of the core elements, and something that we're really keen to develop as well. So what we've also done is we've realised that it's not just your standard employment that people want to do, your training, your teacher assistant, and that kind of thing, but it's also the sort of the social impact. Lewisham's a very interesting borough because it's got a majority of small businesses. The only big employers are the council and Lewisham Homes. So a lot of the organisations a lot of the people that live in Lewisham actually travel out to different boroughs and work there. But the small business there is thriving. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand what small businesses our residents are working on and develop a training accelerator programme to encourage them to develop their business skills, their business plans, gain investment, and get the training and all the different aspects that they might need to help them to actually move to the next step of developing their business. You see these are some of the partnerships that we've got that enable us to do that. We've got DEC, which is a sort of social enterprise space where you get the desk space. There's obviously investment banks where you get the money from, and we've also developed links with partnerships with other housing associations in the borough to ensure that we're offering it to all residents in Lewisham, not just Lewisham Homes residents, so it becomes sort of a partnership approach. And we've got Travis Perkins there because they fund a lot of our stuff as well, so we like them, so I try and put them on when we can. And here's something else that we've done. So what we realised through sort of speaking to other staff within the organisations, particularly our customer services, front-facing housing officers, and also our residents in general, the tenants and residents associations, is that a lot of people, we were just giving ad hoc information to people about different aspects of employment support that's available in Lewisham. So what we've done is we've put everything together in this one-page sheet, which is now available within all areas of our community centres, alongside our head office, and all of our staff have access to this. So if they ask for job support, they've got this, they've got the direct link to all the people that we would refer them to. Alternatively, they can come to us and then we can sort of refer them to these groups. And all of the groups that are on this employment services list are groups that we've met with, and we offer events actually at Lewisham Homes office itself, so residents can come to a place that's familiar to them to get that job support, be it CV support or sort of, general business support, or an overall approach to actual jobs themselves and how to get those. And this is another one of our partnerships projects. So we understood that a lot of our residents, the barrier for them getting to work was their lack of digital skills. It's a similar sort of thing. We've got lots of tenants who are illiterate or have English as a second language, and digital skills is not only for residents of Lewisham, but also for lots of our staff as well, is one of the barriers. So we've linked up with Phoenix Housing and also Lewisham Council, and we've got £20,000 to develop a digital skills for work programme, which we're currently running, and that's funded through Clarion Housing. And it's a trial basis, and we've employed one Lewisham Homes member of staff and a Phoenix member of staff to offer this digital support. So what happens is that a resident will come in, they'll assess what kind of level of digital skills they've got, understand where the difficulties are, and then through that digital skills support person will go through them for a learned approach and overcome these barriers and get them onto the CV, get them onto the job searching sites, and ensure that they've got the digital skills aspect isn't the barrier to them actually getting that job, because it can just be the application form is quite scary online, even if it's for a manual job. So it's trying to understand what are the barriers for our residents, and this project helps support those. I'll help not support them, stop them. And so another thing we've done is we've got a fantastic IT team at Lewisham Homes, and we realised that they wanted to do something for our residents as well that wasn't your day-to-day, everyday sort of IT support. So they take their own time out, an evening every month. They work with residents and they teach them how to code, because obviously coding is one of the new things that's coming out, and lots of jobs like to see it for young and old residents. And it's not something that particularly most generations that are working today have had the skills in. So we offer this free certificate. You can see there from the photo, the people sort of on either end are Lewisham Home staff, and they've just done this free of charge, and they offer it to residents, and it's a really, really popular course. And we've had all ages on it, and it's really sort of helped people to get employment afterwards as well. And so what we do is we don't have any money for the employment support that we do, so we find money. So we really use our contractors that do lots of work for us. We've got our boiler services here at QHS, we've got Travis Perkins, where a lot of the materials are bought from, and we've got United Living, who are currently working on a couple of our high rises. And they've sponsored lots and lots of projects to help us get employment. They do apprenticeships. They've also, United Living has sponsored a fire cadet, which is training and learn how to be in the fire service. And we sort of try and find out, again, what their aims are for their organisation, and try and find a project or something that's happening that they can actually support to try and get our residents back into employment and help them. And so a lot of the work they do is young people, but it does vary. And so here we are onto young people. So we work very closely with our schools. You can see some of the schools here that we work with in Lewisham. We've got Deptford Green and Haberdashers, which are both in Lewisham Homes areas. And we go to all their work experience days, we work closely with them. We get our contractors along to do the CV workshops with them. We get staff there to talk to them from different walks of life, from our female plumber to tell young women that it's actually a good industry to go into. We also go into primary schools. You can see all the young children in the middle, and we talk to them about building houses. So it's got a two-pronged effect with not only trying to educate young people about the opportunities in housing, but also just to talk about what housing is and what Lewisham Homes is. You can see in the bottom here, we've got our Love to Dance and our Young Creators programmes, which is in partnership with a theatre called the Albany in Deptford. And the Love to Dance, we've tried to work with the young people to not only offer them the physical support with the Love to Dance, but also we're trying to develop them to offer dance as a career move. So we've tried to get them into dance training in universities, so that they can move on and set up their own dance skills for residents as well. And the Young Creators is trying to get lots of our young people into the creative industries, be it producing or theatre or camera work, and there's lots of different variety in it. So it's just one of the partnerships and options for our residents. So this is one of our latest approaches, and this is our evening community store, which is opening on Tuesday. And this approach is not only to help people who are low income to get lots of food for a very small cost, but it's also to offer our residents the opportunity to get retail skills. So we offer through if you volunteer for it, you get the training in customer services, you get retail skills by learning how to stock check, the hygiene, you get food hygiene training. So it's all of these little aspects of being a volunteer. Not only do you feel purposeful and you're offering this support to residents, but you also gain additional skills to it as well, all in there. And a lot of it's sustainable because it's all volunteer led. And here's our overall new deal and an enterprise, which is a Lewisham Borough-wide initiative. So we've brought together partners from the NHS, from the Lewisham Council, from they're the only big employers, but lots of the small employees as well across Lewisham, and to understand how can we look holistically as a whole at Lewisham as a borough, understand the needs of residents and what we can do in terms of offering them more employment through different approaches. And lots of those has fed into the approaches that we've got here. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell for Lewisham Homes.
Fantastic.
That's the end of my slideshow.
Thanks, Alys.
No worries.
We can still see your screen, which is fine, but you might want to unshare it in a sec.
Yes.
Whilst you're doing that, I hope you don't mind, I've got, well, I suppose a couple of questions. But you mentioned some tenants working with London Met, I think, University, and being interested in probably the range of roles and opportunities that there are in housing as a career, as a job. How are you, either just at Lewisham or amongst other housing bodies, other ALMOs or housing associations, using that interest? Is there a sort of channel in which people can gain interest, qualifications, and then go into housing jobs and careers, or is it more general?
Sorry, I interrupted you. There's two elements to it. So we've got lots of residents that come and they do the course, and we survey them sort of a month after and a couple of months after to understand if they still want to go into housing, and then we'll offer them work experience within Lewisham Homes. Okay. So we've employed, I think, about 3 residents have got employment at Lewisham Homes as a result of the course. And we've got 2 board members as a result of the course as well. So we really want to further develop residents, if they want us to, within Lewisham Homes, and offer them work experience for anyone that's interested in it.
Fantastic. So you probably answered that. My second question, what was at the back of my mind is some concerns, perhaps they're a bit historic now, that I've heard of tenants and residents working in the organisation that might also be their landlord. Is that like a century out of date, that concern?
Well, interestingly, it's usually okay. We've had lots of residents at work and it's fine, and obviously have access to the system.
Yeah.
We did have an incident last week with the most recent work experience person we had. He was caught taking photos of documents. So that probably has made our cause a lot more difficult. We had to do a lot of work to get the work experience opportunities for residents. But obviously we are aware of the risk, and it has, and unfortunately, become an issue. But we're hoping that we can overcome. Generally people are fine.
So I've sort of heard the good and the bad, really, of doing it, and also just how careful we need to be, obviously, in terms of data and where someone might replace a work experience. And I think it's brilliant to do it. And actually, if people have got an interest in housing, for goodness sake, if they're a tenant resident, they're speaking from the horse's mouth. It's, peer-to-peer. My God, we should be able to use them in our own industry, in our own sector. And then it's just understanding how best to do that. And it doesn't really feel conceptually any different than working for a bank and having a bank account with the same bank. Do you know what I mean? It shouldn't really be any more than that. But we probably, as a sector, just need to be a little bit more alive to the reality of it, without dismissing it as too difficult or not to do. So I'm really glad to hear that you are moving people in with an interest in housing into your own organisations, and perhaps it's something that we collectively, where it makes sense regionally, so where journey travel times are possible, that we also work across other housing associations and ALMOs, so that it's not just all in-house.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah,
I'm pleased to hear you sort of mention that, because I haven't really thought about it for a little while. And the last thing that you mentioned, which I was interested in, and I'll just check the chat box to make sure I'm not missing any questions there. was using contractors for funding support or opportunity creation, and it's something GUAC's talking to HACT about quite a lot at the moment. So HACT is the sort of research and development body for housing associations. And is there, you mentioned you don't have any funding, so does that mean that everything comes from contractor relationships or external funding, or is there a kind of core service of staff that Lewisham Homes do fund, and then it's sort of additional cash or offers or work experience placements that you bring in through your contractors? I wasn't quite sure.
Okay, yeah, the Albany project that we do, so majority of our funding will go to the Albany for the young creatives, the love to dance, and also an older person's Meet Me at the Albany project. So it's a lot of it's arts based.
Okay.
But all the rest of the funding is social value or trying to work with partnerships, which works effectively because it means the projects are sustainable. So what we'll do is we'll get the money from contractors and just seed fund projects, get the residents behind it, and make sure that it's sustainable.
Cool, that sounds great. Fine, and I hope that Evelyn Estate community shop goes well. It sounds like a perfect entry to the social media competition. So good luck with the opening of that. If it's next week, and I hope that goes well.
Yeah, next Tuesday.
Yeah, brings back many memories. I used to cycle that way down to the Evelyn Estate to Southwark Park, blah blah, on my way to work. So anyway, over to Michelle, who has been waiting graciously and patiently. And Michelle, hopefully, I know you sent your slides through, and hopefully we can see your slides in a sec as you share your screen. Michelle, by way of intro, has been working with a few housing associations over the years, and I know Michelle mostly through her work with Radian Housing Association, who are amongst a consortium of housing associations at the moment who are working on quite a big England-France social enterprise and enterprise development project called Increase, and that's running a whole range of courses for thousands of people over the next 3 years across the south coast of England and the north coast of France. So that's how I came across Michelle, but in hearing a bit more from her, realised she's doing an awful lot more than just those courses and just with Radian. But yeah, it's got some really interesting experience and expertise to bring. So coincidentally and happily, Alys's last slide sort of mentioned enterprise and development and that hub in Lewisham, and then we move beautifully into Michelle, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from your experience, Michelle. So again, to our delegates, I'll keep an eye on the chat box, and I'll now sit back and listen to Michelle. So thank you, Michelle.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Lindsay. Can you see my screen all right, everyone? Can I have a look at a little title screen? Nothing exciting. I'll see that jolly good. Okay. Well, hello, and here's me. I'm going to give you a tiny bit of background about me, just so that you can put things in perspective and hopefully understand why on earth I'm doing what I do now. I'll then run through a little bit about the work I've done, particularly with housing associations, mainly in Hampshire to date. Lindsay mentioned Radian. I do some work with Vivid Housing tenants, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And I thought perhaps one of the most useful things to do might just be to get you to do a bit of a role play and think about yourselves if you were potentially going to start a small business, didn't know where to start, not sure how to go about it, and then you were able to come along on some training and the sort of support and advice that we give to the housing association tenants that I work with. So bear with me while I just cover off a little bit of background. Really diverse background in all sorts of different industries and management, marketing, sales, business development. I was lucky enough to live and work in Australia for many years, and through my role as a management consultant and mentor with lots of small businesses, it just gave me a huge breadth of experience with all sorts of different industries and people and setups. So that led me to think I can do something with all this, and I'm working with all these people who run their own businesses. I'll do my own. I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I've done a few things over the years. I set up a small ice cream wholesale business, making ice cream and selling it to restaurants. I also started and managed in Australia a produce network promoting all sorts of Australian produce. Happened to live in one of the wonderful wine regions there, so anything I could do to drink more wine and eat more Australian food, I was happy. When I was back in the UK, the main thing I looked at doing is to start up a business where I developed some unique snack foods, healthy snack foods, and unique packaging that I sold into supermarkets in the UK. That was a huge learning curve, despite having had the sort of business background and knowledge I thought I had. I made lots of mistakes along the way, some successes too, but it was really hard work. And I came out of that a little bit scathed, to be honest, but thinking, well, I want to help other people avoid some of the mistakes I made and increase their chance of success if they've got some fantastic business idea, or even just want to set up something on their own, or they've been unemployed and they want to go self-employed, or they're running a small business and not doing it very well. So since then, I have developed and facilitated numerous courses, programs, mentoring for Radian. Radian approached me a few years ago and said, would you like to develop a program to help us with this? From what I understand, they're one of the sort of leading lights with self-employment. They're particularly interested in helping residents into self-employment. So I took up that challenge and haven't looked back. I like to think at the ripe old age of nearly 50 now, I've finally found what I want to do when I grow up, and here it is. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm so lucky to have probably the most rewarding, satisfying, interesting, enjoyable job I've had in my long career of various things. So that's what I do now. I do some other work with other organisations, but we'll stick to talking about what I do for the housing sector and for tenants of the housing associations I work with currently. When Lindsay asked me to talk, I had a little think about, well, why should, as I believe they should, housing associations be open to the idea of helping tenants, residents with self-employment as well as traditional employment routes, and a lot of the amazing services they already do, helping them with CVs and training and skills development. And there were sort of two things that came to my mind. One is a lot of the people I work with face certain challenges with the traditional permanent employment route. Some of them it might be because of mental health issues, physical health issues, the lack of flexibility in working hours, obviously family commitments, parents with young children particularly. They may have certain personal limitations to the time that they can put into something. And so trying to find employment that fits all that can be quite challenging. A lot of people I work with really would struggle, I think, with the pressures and stress of employment demands, and having to be obliged to sort of get into the office or the workplace at 9 o'clock every morning. A lot of them, of course, have a lot of lack of skills and confidence, which holds them back. And some of them have admitted to me, and I can understand this, they don't feel that they're a good team player, and not everyone is, and not everyone wants to work in that sort of environment. So there's some challenges with that route. The good thing about self-employment, of course, if anybody's looking at starting their own business, they can have greater flexibility with working hours and their conditions. It's not easy by any means, of course. It doesn't mean that you can have long holidays, but it does give you some flexibility to work around any constraints that you have. We've seen a huge improvement in confidence and self-esteem for people just going through the training, regardless of whether or not they then go on to start the business they intended and successfully trade. We have a very good success rate, I'm pleased to say, but it doesn't mean that everybody follows that path. But it improves their confidence, self-esteem. I think what it does is it also gives them a little bit more hope that there are other options out there, other things they could do, and the way in which we structure the training and mentoring is really designed to help them on that path, whether or not they decide to go and start their own business. But obviously, it's all about generating income. We do focus a lot on the sort of financial imperatives of running their own business, and try and get people to really understand the difference between having a hobby perhaps that they enjoy and turning it into a business that's really going to generate a reasonable income for them. Obviously, there's personal satisfaction through self-employment. People get a huge amount of enjoyment from it, and it improves people's self-esteem, because they can say, when someone says, you know, what do you do for a job? If they've been unemployed, rather than saying that, they can say, well, I run a cleaning business, or I run a cake making business. And they don't have to tell me how successful it is, but it gives them a sense of empowerment, I think. Local employment generation. We've had a lot of people who start small businesses who then go on to employ other local people. So the social value generated locally is quite great. And of course, for people who may be really struggling with finding work, or maybe at risk of redundancy, or really unhappy in their work, there are some nice, simple startup options for people who they might have come out of the corporate sector. We've had some amazing people who've done fantastic things in their career, but have frankly had enough, or have had a bit of a wobble along the way. Something's happened in their life. It could have been redundancy, could have been in health, could have been caring for a loved one, and they really need to sort of start afresh, but don't want to go back to what they did before. And there are lots of things they can do, basic things, without huge skill levels or training, and with the gig economy opportunities these days, where you can be, you know, self-employed as a delivery driver or courier driver, if that suits some people, that's something as well that I think it's opening up opportunities, and hence the increase in self-employment generally has helped the government get those employment figures looking better these days. So all that said and done, what we try and do, and what I believe other, you know, certainly housing associations I know around the country try and do, is help people to understand that they have to know enough about small business management and regulations and responsibilities in order to keep themselves out of trouble, at least. You know, they may not be launching a business that's going to set the world on fire, or be creative entrepreneurs doing something really innovative, but that doesn't matter, but they have to know the basics. So having said all that, if you'll bear with me to now put your role play hat on, and I'm going to take a few slides just from a program that we run called Go Your Own Way, and we start people thinking just on the first session of that training program. We have group training sessions, and then we also have one-to-one mentoring, and we just want to start people thinking about what this might mean for them, and whether they should take this route, and should they consider starting their own business, should they consider going self-employed, particularly for those who've never done it before, have no idea what's involved. It can be quite scary for them, and we want to give them the foundation that means if they decide to do it, they know what they need to know to at least stay out of trouble, and not have huge complications and risks further down the track. So one thing we say first of all is, if you're thinking about it, ask yourself why and what it is that you want to achieve. We work with people to look at their personal budget and income needs, and also lifestyle issues, because they have to think about how long they can work, their working hours. This all goes then into some fabulous spreadsheets that we do that literally says, if you work this many hours on this business, and this many are effectively productive or income generating, and these are non-chargeable, what's that going to look like over a week, a month, a year? And we talk to them about the type of work. We do get them to do a bit of navel gazing and really understand what their own strengths and weaknesses are, do their own sort of personal SWOT analysis, and also think about the timing. A lot of people think, oh yes, I really want to do this, but there could be barriers in the way, or it might not be the right time, so we address that. And we ask them just to, you know, consider other ways of achieving their financial and personal goals, and talk to them about combining employment with self-employment and how that works, and how that can be very helpful in the early stages if you have financial pressures that mean launching straight into self-employment, building up a business with little or no income to start with. We just point them in the right direction if they need to look at maybe some part-time employment. So we then talk about personality, skills, things that they need to consider. It doesn't mean that if they don't tick all these boxes that they're not going to make a success of it, but they need to understand some of the key things that they might find challenging, and that if they address things now before they really sort of start running their business, it will be better in the long run, because they won't sort of be up and running and then suddenly realise, oh my goodness, I'm so disorganised and I don't have time management, or I need to work on my IT skills. So we do a bit of work with that. And of course they have to think about their personal circumstances. We're very keen for people to understand not just the financial commitments involved, but to ask themselves if they have a good support network around, particularly if they've been used to working in a team environment, a group environment, and moving into self-employment can be quite lonely for some people. It's something they struggle with, and we talk about ways to try and overcome that, and also to make sure that they've got their own support network. They can't do anything about whether they're a lucky person or not, but we also want people to understand that sometimes, you know, bad luck comes along the way, and not to beat themselves over the head about it. We give them a little reality check just so that they understand the risks involved, the unsociable working hours sometimes, the financial outlay, the things they need to learn, and the fact that they don't have the employment benefits like holiday pay, sick pay, no pension contributions. And once we've gone through all that, we work very hard on helping people to develop a model for their business, whatever it is, whether they're baking cakes or they're going to be doing a service business, whether they're going to be doing gardening or cleaning, whatever it is. We develop a financial model with them that says, how are you going to determine what needs to happen for your business to be financially viable? In other words, to deliver at least the minimum income you need over a period of time. So we help them with those numbers, and we suggest to people, sometimes they come to our programs knowing quite clearly what it is they want to do and who they want to do it for, and other times they've got too many ideas, sometimes they have no idea. And so we help them to understand a process they can go through. They really do need to define their product or service and their target market as soon as possible, because it's very difficult to move forward and create financial models and business plans without that. We talked about market research, which of course is very important for them to understand their market, and wherever that is geographically, and also their competitors and things like that. We then make sure they understand things like their legal structure, relevant regulations, including tax, national insurance, health and safety. We give them a sort of checklist, a pre-trading checklist, make sure that they've covered all the bases. Help them understand a business planning process. We don't insist they prepare a war and peace business plan, but it's a helpful process to go through. And then we try and help them in any way we can to launch their business. And certainly with the housing associations I've worked with, there have been ongoing support programs, mentoring, sometimes some sponsorship, and a bit like Alys was talking about before, sometimes there are opportunities within the housing association to come in and sort of test what it is that they're doing. We've had people coming and doing things like life coaching, and they've done it for groups of employees within the housing associations. It's a nice test bed for them. It's a nice sort of friendly, easy test bed. So we tell people about that. We give them some tips along the way. At the moment, the programs that I'm running are for over a period of 5 days of group training, 5 half days. And that covers everything from marketing and digital marketing. We focus on that. We also talk about all the bookkeeping issues and accounting and tax, and really get people to understand how it all works so that they have no nasty surprises. We tell them they've got to get the numbers right, understand their business model, key things like cash flow forecasts that some people have no idea how this works or what it's all about. We do try and get a lot of people to focus. People can be very ambitious to start with, and we try and help them to focus on a small niche market to start with and take baby steps. We help them to make friends with HMRC and understand how they can get advice and support from HMRC, so that they don't get into trouble and have horrible tax bills or unexpected fines or anything like that. We talk about market research, as I said, business planning, and also point them in the direction of the huge amount of generally free help, advice and support that's out there from their local councils, housing associations, lots of things online. We talked about books and government resources and things, networking groups, depending on what they're looking to do. And we tell them to make sure they find out what they need to know about before they start, hopefully. Although a lot of people do come on our courses when they've already started, but that's okay. We help to guide them back onto the right path if they've strayed. So that's just a quick overview. I'll finish the slideshow now and just maybe ask any questions you want of me about how maybe self-employment could be promoted or encouraged within your areas if you think it's relevant.
Fab. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. That was really helpful. As you went through, you were kind of answering some of my questions as you went, like how long does the course take and all the rest of it. You know, you cover an awful lot in it. I'll go first to a question from Eric. Hello, who's put in the chat box the experience many tenants have got. I'll just read this too. Have got financial barriers to self-employment. Eric, this was going to be one of my questions too. So they've got grant funding to help test ideas, but that can't last forever, that grant funding. So it's about moving into preparing and improving credit file if that's an issue. That's a kind of a long-term transition from someone who may be benefits dependent or maybe in debt, moving into trading and into potentially, I think what Eric is saying there, into loans and business management and business banking, which may be difficult. So Eric's asking if you've got any thoughts around growing and scaling up businesses that move from, I suppose, a supported environment in the housing association. I'm just looking at Eric's notes again, with maybe a bit of grant funding, and then moving into a healthier credit rating and making that transition into, albeit perhaps a modest but a functioning trading business with a sustainable cash flow. Have you got any thoughts or experience on that, Michelle?
Yes. One of the things that I think we've worked very hard to do is to be sensitive to a lot of the financial constraints that people have when they're starting their businesses, and that the sort of things we look at, it's unlikely that they're going to be looking at being in a position to raise huge amounts of capital either through banks and loans or other sort of equity funding, anything like that. So we take it one step at a time. As far as credit rating goes, it's not something we cover, but I think we point them in the right direction if they need some help. What we do is, firstly, we make sure if they are on existing benefits, they understand the impact of, say, universal credit on self-employment and how that works, and the fact that for the period of 12 months, they will get a top-up of universal credit dependent on what employment income they generate, self-employment income they generate. But after the 12 months, they then are assumed to have this minimum income floor on the wage. So we make sure people understand how that is going to impact on benefits. If they are in a position where they could apply for any other sort of funding or grants or loans, again, we put them in the right direction, start with local councils and things like this. We also have an affiliation with the organisation that facilitates the applications for Virgin startup loans. So that's an area that we work with, because if they're at that stage that they have a good, robust business plan, they've done their market testing, and it's all looking quite robust. We then work with them to complete the applications and understand the sort of information and financial forecasts and things that the loan application would need. We tell them, we suggest they talk to their bank, but a lot of the people we work with wouldn't really get much of a look in with traditional funding.
Yeah.
We advise them also about all various routes to funding. Pre-trading is very difficult, of course, to get that sort of startup funding, but once they're up and running, we just give them a little taster and let them know this is how angel investment works. this is how sort of institutional investment, venture capital, I went through it myself with my business, and so give them a few hints and tips and experience. And I'll be honest with you, I tell them to try and avoid it if they can, because it's hard work. Eric, I hope that answers some of your question.
Thank you. Yeah, Eric, I think that's helped, and I've just gone back to Eric as well. He says, you mentioned the minimum income floor, which again was something that was on my mind as you were talking about that spreadsheet, and allowing people to be realistic about the time they need the income that they might project over a week, a month and a year. And then you've talked about how that can be affected on universal credit. And I know that not all of your delegates, your course delegates, Michelle, will be necessarily in receipt of universal credit, but I suspect a strong number would be on some form of either housing benefit or employment support. And Eric's question was, do you think the minimum income floor, which is that amount that the DWP have decided you must earn to be self-employed, to be a viable self-employed business, do you think it's realistic, says Eric? And I've just asked him, to my shame, I don't know what it is. I think it's something like 12 or 14,000 pounds a year gross, but I'm not sure. Do you know, Michelle? And if you do know, do you think that minimum income floor is realistic for small businesses starting out just within really their first year of trading?
It depends on the business. This question about is it realistic? I haven't done the annual numbers, but it's basically that they should be paying themselves through their small business at least minimum wage. They should be paying themselves at least minimum wage. And that's the assumption that will be made for any calculations of universal credit top-up.
Right.
Now, is it realistic? It depends on the business. And unfortunately, of course, this isn't handled on a case-by-case basis. It's a blanket directive. It's how it's going to apply to everyone at the moment. If you're starting up a small business, I tell people it took me 2 years from the point I started researching, developing my products, to the first product being on the shelf in a supermarket. And that was working pretty hard. It took me 2 years. Yeah. Having said that, it then took me a further 6 months before I could afford to pay myself. So, however, if somebody was, say, starting cleaning or window cleaning business, something like that, then yes, I think it is fairly realistic, because if they can't get a relatively simple business up and running within that time, they've got to ask themselves why not, and what's holding them back.
Yeah.
And I think, because whether we like it or not, there might be people out there, for example, who are claiming they're self-employed and going out there and saying that they're doing lots of work, but charging the equivalent of £4 an hour to clean windows, and it's just not commercially viable. So I think there's a really fine balance to be struck between encouraging people into self-employment, supporting them through things like universal credit top-ups for the first 12 months. But there has to come a point where you say, well, if you're not able to earn a certain amount, unfortunately it is stuck at 12 months for everyone, but if you're not able to earn that, why is it? And it might be that they're not charging enough, and that affects, of course, the whole market as well. I've had a lot of people come and work with me who say they don't want to earn over 11,850, because then they won't have to pay any tax. So
yeah, absolutely.
There have to be some checks and balances, I guess.
Yeah, that's useful and makes sense. And thanks, Eric. I think he's right. I was just looking online as well, that the minimum expectation is 25 hours of work a week, which is interesting, because if you're on universal credit with a claimant commitment, you're not working, you're expected to search for work, I believe 35 hours a week full time. So that's at £7.83 per hour, and we know, I think we know that the national minimum wage is going up, the national minimum wage, to £8.21 per hour. So that's sort of really, if you take Eric's 25 hours a week, that's sort of anything between £9,000 and £12,000 gross a year, which is not a lot, but it sort of feels reasonable. And yet we know that from small trading businesses with discrete services and products, that can be really hard to generate actually, as turnover, not least as profit. If you're, you know, if you've got a lot of input, if you're providing a goods or service that requires a lot of investment, you know, relative to what you're earning. So I guess it is a challenge, and we know from years, actually, from a few years, that various enterprise agencies have mentioned the minimum income floor as an issue, and I think it's one that the DWP are aware of, but I don't think it's going to disappear. And I can understand the point they're making, but I think it's a little bit like a lot of things in the DWP. The rules are a little bit immovable and fixed, and don't really allow, you know, for what about some latitude between months 12 and 18 or 18 and 24?
Exactly.
Because we know that businesses can take a long time to establish and can then go on to really sustainable, good success rates. So, yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Eric. I hope that was helpful. And yes, it also makes a point about access to working capital. So that cash flow issue, how do you begin if you have really a zero cash base? And I know that we've got, Eric, this will be in the webinar library, the GUAC library online, so do have a look. I'll send the link around. And we did a previous webinar with an enterprise that runs very short, almost day courses really, in starting your business from a zero cash base. And they've worked with a number of housing associations as well. So I'll send that link around as well in terms of how you begin to trade with basically zero cash base. And it's arguable whether that is always possible or not, but that's their driver. So Eric, I'll make sure you've got that link.